welcome to another painting tutorial. Today we're gonna create this super fall appropriate flower field painting. We're gonna start with a watercolor wash and then paint all the flowers with gouache paints. I'm gonna use my watercolor sketchbook today, but any watercolor paper would do the job. And then I'll just quickly frame my page with some washi tape so we'll get clean edges to this picture at the end. I used these brushes for this tutorial, but the biggest one could easily be replaced with a bigger flat brush or any other brush you like to use for background washes. But speaking of background washes, we're gonna start exactly from that. So I decided to create the background with watercolors instead of gouache because I just like the texture you're able to get with them a little bit more. So we're gonna use wet on wet technique with the background, which means that you wanna wet the whole surface before adding any paint on it. This will help the paints melt very evenly to the page and it's easier to avoid any harsh edges. And then we're just gonna start adding some paint and create this first background layer. I wanted the background to be pretty dark for this painting, so since we're gonna add another layer on top of this one, the first layer doesn't really matter that much. I wanted there to be some color variation in the background because I think it will create a very beautiful effect in the end and give much more life to this whole picture. I mostly used some different brown tones, but threw in some additional ochre and cream colors to add some variation. My first layer looked pretty messy in the end, and I also added a little bit too much water to some of these areas, which caused a little bit of this pluming effect. It happens especially if you've already added a layer of color which has started to settle in place but not dry completely, and then you go and add water on that spot. It kind of disturbs the paints underneath and creates these bold spots. So if you have similar troubles, just let the first layer dry a bit and then go over everything with a second layer of color. For me, it smoothed out everything pretty nicely. I know the background probably doesn't look very promising in this point, but trust me, it's all gonna come together. So now it's time to start loading some warm gouache paints to our painting palette. I recently got these new clear palettes, mainly because they were really cheap, and I chose some orange tones here, and you'll also need a white and a dark brown color. I looked through some flower pictures to get some inspiration and decided to combine these daisy looking flowers with some smaller white ones. So I took out the middle-sized brush and started with the bigger daisy flowers. We are first just gonna create the shapes of them with one color. The shapes don't need to be perfect in this point by any means. And it also doesn't matter if some of your petals end up being longer than others. It's actually just a good thing if they are not completely symmetrical. So I kind of created some bigger flowers here. And then you can see me adding a few of these much looser flower shapes kind of to the background. Whenever I want the flowers to look like they're more blending to the background, I use a little bit more water with my paints so that the paints won't create as harsh edges and they kind of blend together to the background a little bit more. But after these first initial shapes, we can start to add some details. So I took out my thinnest brush in this point and just started to add some more lines to the petals. So first I chose a color that was a little bit lighter than the background layer we added to the flower, and then I also chose a little bit darker one, and then just started to add these random lines to the petals. And you can see it starts to create a little bit more lights and shadows between them. also added some shadows and kind of some dots to the middle section, and then just repeated the same process for all of these bigger flowers. So after adding some more definition to all these flowers, I just started to add some darker leaves and branches to the picture. These don't need to be super detailed in this point, so please don't worry yourself too much with this step. I know it sometimes might be a little bit difficult to get very thin strokes, so if you feel nervous about that, I would maybe add a little bit more water to my paint first, so that the first leaves and strokes won't stand out too much and will kind of blend the background a little bit more until you kind of get the hang of it, and then you can start to add some darker leaves on top of everything else. But in this point, I also started to add these white flowers in here. So these are actually very simple to create. I just basically added these random groups of tiny white dots. And then I kind of added some darker brown under the white group, kind of to create the appearance of some stems connecting everything together. After painting a few of these white flowers, I felt like this picture looked a little bit empty and that there was too much empty space at the top. So I just decided to add a few more of these orange flowers and also take the white flowers a little bit higher than I initially had in mind. But after that, it's just adding more and more of these same details until you feel like you're ready with the painting. You can see how I also added just some random white dots. I think it often creates a very pretty effect to any field paintings or pretty much anything with flowers in general. And after some of these final brown leaves and branches, our simple fall flower field is finally done. I really love these colors, especially for this time of the year. I think this could be a beautiful cover page idea for any fall bullet journal theme, or it could also be a beautiful idea for a greeting card around this time of the year. But yeah, now all that was left was to remove the tapes around the picture and reveal our clean edges. I really hope you guys enjoyed this simple tutorial and that you will give it a go. Anyways, if this was your first time here on this channel, definitely consider subscribing to stay tuned for some more painting and bullet journaling stuff. I also have a Patreon where I post an extra tutorial every single month, and there's also some other extra stuff in there if you want to take a look. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're having an amazing day or night wherever you are, and see you in my next one. Bye bye!